Good morning, everybody. Scooter coming to you live from the Granville Guitars World Headquarters here in St. Petersburg, Florida. We are here this morning with our old friend and compadre, Robin Sibucao.
Good morning, Robin. That compadre part's like my middle name anymore.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and it is early.
It is early. I appreciate you coming in early so we can take care of this before the shop opens.
That's all right. I like to be interviewed before I wake up.
Well, let's just dive right in here, Robin. Discuss your earliest musical memories.
Earliest? Oh, okay. I started playing pretty early. Around 5, 6 years old, I got a little guitar. And this goes back to when there were dinosaurs, because I used to watch the Ozzie and Harriet show. And Ricky Nelson was on there. And I used to think that was so cool, right? I'd wait till it was over. He'd always play a song at the end. And he had this guitar player that played this Telecaster that would just smoke. And I'd try to run back to my bedroom and remember a couple licks or a couple things. So I started playing then. By the way, that guitar player was Jimmy Burton.
Jim Burton.
Later went on to be with Elvis, right? Great guitar player.
Uh-huh.
So I started playing early. Back in those days, there were a lot of little bands that would play at houses and little dances. And I had an older sister, so I got drugged around and I got to see it. So I fell in love with the guitar. Got in my first band at 11, 6-piece band with a couple horns. We did everything from Misty to Dion and the Belmonts to eventually the Beatles came out and we started doing Beatles stuff. And you know, for all of us that have been in music for a while now, once the Beatles came out, it didn't just change you as a musician, it changed you. Changed everything about you. I knew at that moment that the rest of my life I'd do something with music and I'd be playing the guitar doing something. So I started early. I played with numerous bands all through junior high, high school. I graduated in June. In July I was in Los Angeles. I knew that I had to go out and play, and music got me around the world, got me around the country, and I still love it today. I quit playing for a little bit only because of raising a family and moving around the country and taking on what they call real jobs. But back playing with a lot of good friends of mine, having a blast with this band called Cuckoo Cuckoo, and it's a ball. We play every week doing something, so that's kind of a short of it.
So your earliest musical memories were the Beatles. Anything prior to that?
Yeah, I mean there was Roy Orbison, of course. There was all the great doo-wop bands like I said, Dion the Belmonts, those guys. And there used to be a place in Clearwater, Florida. It was right over when you go over the bridge going to Clearwater. It was called. I grew up in Tampa, by the way. It's called the Clearwater Star Spectacular. They used to pull a bus up, and like 8 acts would get out. They'd have the Beach Boys, Fabian, Dick and Dee Dee, and they'd have maybe 2 or 3 local bands. So you could go there and see these big, quote, big acts back then, way before the Beatles, like 3, 4, 5 years before the Beatles. I think you had to be 16 to get in. I snuck in somehow at 10 or 11 years old. I used to sneak in. But it was really cool because one of the local bands would get the sheet music and they'd have to play behind all those different acts that came in. And then, of course, once the Beatles hit, that whole scene changed because the bands came intact and they played then. But that was a very cool place. I wish we had places like that today, not only in the Tampa Bay area, but around the country, because it's hard for younger players to get to see a lot of bands now. And if you do, my goodness, it's $7,500 a ticket to get in. So kind of miss those kind of days.
Who or what compelled you to first pick up a guitar?
It's a great question. Had a cousin, she had a boyfriend, he had an old Gibson that was an acoustic. I don't remember the model of it, but it sounded like if you were playing a 335 just without being plugged in. Wasn't very good. And he would come over and tune it up about four pitches up, because nobody had a capo back then. And he'd play all these songs sitting around my mother and father's living room, and that would compel me to go get my little Stella guitar out of the back bedroom and sit in front of him and try to put my hands wherever I saw his hands. That got me going. And then, like I said, a lot of my older friends, a lot older than me, they were in bands, and I'd go see them, and they were also kind enough when I was very young to let me plug in, play a couple tunes with them, get my feet wet.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Who was your main guitar influence?
Well, that's hard to say, It really is. Because, as all of us, as we progress through our playing, we all of a sudden will move to a different style, I mean, early on, like I said, it was Jimmy Burton, and Then the Beatles came out, and of course we went through Hendrix, and I think during that period, the one that probably made the biggest difference in my life, and probably a lot of you guitarists' life, was the John Mayall Beano album.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as soon as I stuck down and heard Steppin' Out Hideaway, I went, ooh, the world changed. You know, what's that funny sound? How come the guitar sounds like that? My guitar doesn't sound like that. So I think that was probably when Clapton, at that point, I think that's when Clapton was God. I think that's when he was God at that time. Somebody named it that, wrote it on the walls. I wish he still played that guitar and still had that amp and still sounded like that, even though it's great. I just love that sound.
Right.
I think that might have been it in the early days for me. And then, you know, as time went on, you know, then you start getting into the other genres of music. I started listening to more of George Benson and people like that, and Lee Ritenour. I mean, come on, those guys are great players. And now Steve Lukather, to this day, I think he's probably the most versatile player out of everybody that's out there right now. Mm-hmm. And of course, you know, then there's the standard Beck, Page, and Clapton. Those three guys kind of guided us all through rock and roll, you know.
Right. And Beck is still out there.
Beck is, you gotta love him. I mean, because he's like a chameleon, right? He just keeps moving, keeps changing.
Yeah.
I think, like Eddie Van Halen is a wonderful player.
Mm-hmm.
I think and thought he was going to be the next Beck.
Mm-hmm.
He's not changing and hasn't changed like Beck. I'd like to see him take on some stretch a little bit like Beck does.
Right.
I'd like to see him do that because he's a wonderful player.
Right.
But you listen to Jeff Beck, and then of course Jeff, you know, gets those great players like Vinnie Colaiuta playing drums with him. That's you know, one of the best ever. And Tal, the bass player, she's on her own now, but he's always got fun things going on. Yeah, I remember getting the first Truth album. That was one when I first got that, and Rock Me Baby and all those were on there. Those are great rock tunes.
He's one of those artists that when you go to a record store, you can't find him in any one category. He's been all over the place. So they should probably just have a Jeff Beck section.
They should. I remember he came out with an album about 12 or 13 years ago. I think it was something Hands. It had two dirty hands on the front, and I got it and I went, uh-oh. Jeff went over the edge. I like put the CD on and listened to it and went, oh boy.
Is that the one that was kind of techno?
Sort in some parts. It had little bird sounds and things in it. So I gave it to a buddy of mine, and he said, "You don't want this?" I said, "No." He's gone.
Yeah.
He called me up the next day and said, "Did you really listen to this?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You need to listen to this again." He came back over. We sat down, a few beers, and listened to it. And I went, "Yep, I missed it."
Yeah.
He was smoking, so one of those great guys.
He's sneaky.
Oh, by the way, he doesn't have 7,000 pedals either.
No, he doesn't even have any picks.
Right.
No pick. Have you ever been influenced by non-guitar music or players?
Oh yeah. I listened to a lot of bass player in the early, quote, fusion days. I just loved a lot of things like Stanley Clarke was doing, and can't think of the guy off the top of my head right now. The Yellow Jackets. He also played with
Jimmy
Altero.
Haslip.
Jimmy Haslip, who used to play in the area here. Matter of fact, I walked into the it's the Pink Hotel. Don Cesar one night. There used to be a club downstairs, and he was in there playing. So he was around here. I loved the percussive way they played, the slap, the pop. And you know, they only have 4 strings to work with, and how do you make it melodic with just 4 strings? I listened to a lot of that, listened to a lot of trumpet players, sax players. I love a lot of the Cuban music that's out there. I just think it's fun listening to how they, it's not guitar oriented, and it's really fun listening to the structure of how they do it, the way they'll play clusters of notes. It's just cool. So I think that's really good for players to listen to things other than a guitar too. Because I also found out years ago I plugged in the first guitar synthesizer. And I plugged it in. I never got one because I never could figure out how to play it. But it made you play different because you were hearing something like a flute when you were playing. So you played a little different. You got outside of the box.
Right.
You got outside of your little box and started. You go, oh yeah, that's how a flute is, right? It makes you appreciate it there a little bit. So I think for players, I think they should listen to every genre they can listen to. They should try to play it, and they should listen to as much music as they can take. Unless it gets too far out of something they're not enjoying. Right. You got to enjoy it.
Oh, sure.
Like I know people love opera. I can't listen to opera. I'm not a big opera guy. But there are some things that I really like listening to. They're a little bit over the wall that I go, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So I listen to a lot of different stuff, and acoustic players too, because they play much different than electric players do.
Oh, you have to.
So it's fun listening to what they're doing, because James Taylor, he doesn't get enough credit for what a great guitar player he is.
He is a fantastic.
He's a great guitar player. He had a great guitar player playing with him, Bob Mann.
Oh yeah.
Was with him for a long time. Bob also played with Blood, Sweat and Tears, and I think he was in that group in New York called the Dream back in the day that had the Brecker brothers were the horn section, Billy Cobham was the drummer, and actually Rodney Justa, who sings in Cuckoo Cuckoo, was the singer in that band.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to get Rodney in here.
Yeah, you need to get Rodney. Well, not when I'm here. You can bring him in.
Let's see here. Describe the local music scene where you came up, and by that I mean when you first really started looking at yourself as a musician, not someone playing at garages or parties. When you first really started to think of yourself as a musician, describe the scene. Where were you? What other bands were there? What were the clubs you were playing?
Yeah, again, we were very fortunate. Musicians were fortunate, and bands were fortunate back in the mid-'60s to the late '60s, because there were places to play. So there was a process that went on, and again, I just really wished we could do something today to do that over again. And what I mean by that, when you were in your first little garage band, junior high school, you could play at a recreation center. I think they paid us $40, and there was like 6 guys in the band, right? But you got to play in front of somebody. So, yeah, you pretty much sucked, but there was somebody there that watched you, and you went home and you went, okay, I'm going to do it better next time, and you would practice, and you get the band together, and then you'd play a bigger rec center. And then back in those days, too, they would have things like, there'd be an auto opening, a car lot opening, and they'd have pony rides and hot dogs, and they'd have a band.
Right.
So you had a gig. And then from there, you progressed into being able to play at a club. And I remember the days there was a club in Madeira Beach. It's called the Surfers Club. And I had a band called Jester's 4. I think I was 13 at the time. But there were some really good bands there. There were the Tropics out of Tampa and the Outsiders that had gone on. They won some national battle bands. And those were guys at the time. I guess I was 13 or 14. They were like 21, 22. I thought they were going to die the next year because they were old. Right? I said, wow, these guys are old, right? And they all wear the same outfits. How do they do that? That's pretty weird. They all got the same suits on. But that was cool because it put me in the place that at that age I was able to start seeing how the club routine worked, how bands interacted. A lot of guys were very helpful. They would say, hey, come here, kid, and they'd talk to you and help you along. And some guys were, either they didn't want to talk to you because you were a kid, or there was some competition. Mm-hmm. And not that I was anything to compete with, but it was like I could feel that as time went on. Because I played through in Tampa till I was 16, and then I left for Los Angeles. But that's something that I feel is missing for our younger players today is where do you play? How do you go to that place to work up to playing that? And then what happens after the club gig? You get called to open for somebody. And you may open for somebody, or you get called for somebody else's band that saw you play. So that was a process that I went through, and I think a lot of guys at my age, 39, I think they all went through that during those years. I'm pretty sure. And one of the things I was talking to the city council in St. Petersburg of how do we make St. Petersburg more music-centric? And of course, the first thing everybody talks about is, what big guys can we get down here? Can you call so-and-so and get this touring guy? And I said, no, what we need is, and kind of what I just talked about, we've got all these rec centers sitting around that are just dormant. Why don't we have Friday nights as junior high school band night? Mm-hmm. And maybe, the first couple times nobody will show up. I'm sure some parents will be there with their kids. But the next time there'll be a few more kids come, and maybe we could build this way instead of trying to build this way, so they have some place to play.
Instead of bringing some big guys up.
Yeah, what good is that, right?
Grow some.
Let's grow them. Yeah. Support them.
Exactly.
Every city likes to talk about being music-centric, from Austin all the way through back here at home at St. Pete. Proud to call it St. Pete my home now. But they need to put the time into finding the places that younger musicians can play. It's got to be some way they get a chance to do that.
I would agree with that. Discuss some highlights of your playing career.
I've been very lucky in that I've been on a lot of different sides of the music industry. I played, of course, for years and still play. Then somewhere, I ran a little music store for a while, got to feel what it was like to sell from retail, got to meet a lot of manufacturers, and around in the mid-'80s I got drafted by Bose Corporation. They were looking to open a professional products division. Once I got on that side of the counter, I got to meet a lot of players that were endorsees, that we worked with. I got to find out a lot more about how they were doing things. That when playing, it was different when you're looking at someone from a business aspect. I moved out of that into, and that was primarily, live sound systems, to opening a music company in Seattle called Play Network. And when you walk into any Starbucks around the world, you're going to see a little black speaker up in the corners in Starbucks, and it says Play Network. That was the company. We did all their music, all their sound systems, and by doing that, I got to hear all these genres of music, because Starbucks was very big on the different types of music they would play. So I guess if I said, I can't pick a place that I said, I jammed with Jimmy Page and that was the one. I think I like the idea that I was able to be around the industry in many different ways, both as a player, being on the side of retail, then being on the side where we made the sound system products and we created music to go around the world. And that allowed me to take a look at the music industry, and still to this day. As a matter of fact, today I have a nonprofit company called Big Noise Halo, and it's all about finding funding to help students learn how to run live sound. There is no place that a student can go to learn how to run live sound without spending enough to buy a Ferrari, and that's not fair. So we have an organization here in St. Petersburg that works in St. Petersburg and Tampa, and we find funding, and when we get the funding in, then we bring students in, and we bring in, not only do we bring in local really good instructors that are still doing live sound, but we'll bring in people like Howie Lindemann, who was out on tour. He was with he did John Lennon, he did Stevie Wonder. He's had like 7 platinum records and something ungodly amount of gold. Those folks want to give back too, and they'll come in and do workshops and help these students. So playing guitar has taken me in this journey that's still bringing me around, and I still get to be involved, and now I'm trying to help the next end of this. Now, there's still performance involved in that as well, but we find a lot of our students, and when I say students, that doesn't mean they're 16 years old. We have people from 16 to 45 that are taking classes. This is an opportunity for us to say, we want to help. We want to help. So I guess that's the highlight, as being on different sides of music for the last 45 years.
Okay. Very good. I like that. Are you proficient on any other instruments, specifically non-guitar style instruments?
No, I'm not even proficient on guitar.
Okay, now come on. I'm going to argue with you on that.
No, I played drums for a while in my younger years, but I was never really good at it. And I tried to play a saxophone when I was in junior high school. I remember you used to go to junior high school and you could rent an instrument. And I remember I said, I want to play an alto sax. That looks cool. So the band instructor came over and he said, well, here's an alto sax. You want to try to play it? And I went, yeah, sure. So he took the mouthpiece and he went, here, try it. And I went, no, I'll play drums. So that kept me from playing horn. But I love sax, I love trumpet, I love all the other instruments. But no, I don't.
Okay, fair enough. Talk about a turning point in your career, a time, an event, a day where nothing was the same ever again in your career. There was before and there was after, very clearly.
As far as playing?
As far as your career, whatever point you want to talk about, but there was before and there was after, very clearly marked.
Yeah, And this isn't on a financial side. It's when I started, I think when I started having really a lot of fun at playing. And, you know, I played, as a younger player, you want to be the gunslinger on the block that can pull your gun out with everybody else, right? And you work hard and you try hard and you play with your pals. And then later, you work, and it becomes work, and I don't care what it is, once it becomes work, it's work. So, you know, you're really at your craft, you're really working at it. When I semi-retired from the business, from being in the audio business and music business when I was in Seattle, and by the way, that's the other thing that guitars give me a chance to do. I got a chance to live in Los Angeles, New England, and Seattle, and of course I live here, so it's all 4 spots around the country, couldn't be any further away. I came home, and I just, you know, I was kind of just playing acoustic guitar at that point. And one of my best friends ever called me up and said, you know, what do you play, you bowl? I go, no, I don't bowl. Play poker? No, I don't play poker. He said, me either. What are we doing Wednesday nights? And I went, what are you getting at? He goes, we should do something. We should get some guys together and do something. So, ended up being me and my friend Rodney Justo and Roy Garcia. We started getting together and playing guitars and playing Beatles songs on Wednesday nights. And next thing I know, we had Danny George playing bass and Roger Stevens, both great players. And we put together Cuckoo Cuckoo. And that has been the most fun of me playing music that I can remember. We act like we're trying to get a label deal. I mean, we're pretty serious. I mean, we rehearse every Wednesday night in Tampa, come hell or high water. There can be a hurricane off there. We're going, oh, no, we got 6 o'clock. There got to be a rehearsal. But we do it for the pure love of playing the music we want to play and arranging things. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing it, this is hard to believe, it's been 10 years this year that Cuckoo's been together. Yeah. And we still get together and rehearse. Now, Rodney and Roger also play in the Atlanta rhythm section. Mm-hmm. So they'll go out some weekends, so Cuckoo's down. And then when they're back, then Cuckoo's up, and then we'll play. So we have a blast. But I think that might have been the turning point musically for me. And also, the group plays different than any other band I've ever played with. We play as an ensemble group. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that we actually play parts that when you play in a normal band, you might just play the tune. We'll play some passages where maybe I only play single notes in some passages and not playing chords. Or I don't play at all. Mm-hmm. Or I'm playing a cello part, or I'm playing something other than a guitar part. Mm-hmm. That really makes it exciting. Mm-hmm. Really makes it exciting as a guitar player. And then, of course, there's 5 guys in the band, and there's probably every other song there's 5-part harmony. And they ain't easy harmonies. I mean, Rodney comes up with some pretty tough harmony parts that we have to practice. We have to write those out, listen to them, come back the next week, and get told, you suck. You didn't get your part right. So it really is fun. So that was a great turning point where I started loving music again, loving hanging out with the guys. Anybody that plays, you know, that's part of the deal. When you go on the road, when you play out, you're with your pals and you're having a good time. So I think that was a big turning point for me.
I think maybe what you're describing as being the satisfying part of it musically is because all of you sing. When you are a singer and you're playing your instrument, in my opinion, you must focus more closely on the ensemble.
Yes. Yep.
There's no room for showing off.
You're not cluttering anything up, right? You're just not cluttering it up.
Let's see here. Discuss your current gig.
Current gig?
Yes.
Well, like I said, I've been around the pro audio industry now for quite some time. I'm still involved in it. I still do a lot of consulting within the pro audio and musical instrument industries. As little as I can, to be honest. But I enjoy it. I like being involved. And right now, through the end of this year and the first part of 2017, totally focused on Big Noise Halo. I really want to help the community. I mean, there's just no place. For instance, there's a lot of volunteer sound people that we never think about. A lot of churches. And you know how church guys get to run the sound system? They're usually drafted. Mm-hmm. Somebody will say, is anybody here on a stereo at home? Yeah. And guy raises his hand. Next thing you know, he's sitting in front of a Midas board, right? He goes, what do I do with this? And those folks work, because they have real jobs, So when would they have time to learn? So part of what we're doing with Halo is we're setting up instructors, locations, and places that we start at 6 o'clock at night. We go from 6 to 10. And we do workshops at premises. Matter of fact, Shure Microphones is doing a workshop coming up for us in December. Going to be talking about wireless. And these are all free, by the way. We do all of our workshops free for the community. So we have like Shure Microphones, we have Midas. Dean Guitars is a big supporter of the program, as well as D-Drums. There's a lot of different folks who have stepped up to help because they also see the void here. So that is my focus now. And then starting next year, I'll be, to be announced, I'm putting together a management team that will be working within the pro audio industry again as a solid team. And that we are already working on that, but that won't launch in probably till Q2 of next year.
So you're busy.
Yeah, I'm busy. I am.
Where?
That's why I enjoyed getting up at 7 o'clock this morning
Oh.
and have a cup of coffee with you.
Where and how often do you perform?
Cuckoo doesn't play that much. If we play 24 times a year, that'd be a lot. And I think that's the other thing. We only take places that we enjoy playing. We do a lot of corporate events, which are nice too. And we play. If we play locally, about the only place we can play in St. Pete is the Palladium, and we love the Palladium. They have two great venues. They have a downstairs area. It's very small, intimate. We love playing there, and then they have the big theater upstairs that we play as well. Palladium, St. Pete, Tampa. We play the Hard Rock, but tell you what, you need to play 3 sets there. We're a set and a half band. Mm-hmm. We're on for an hour and 15, 20 minutes. That's it.
Right.
And then we go in the back and drink our Geritol and take our vitamins. So we play a lot of corporate events. We'll do things like if there's like main sale they have in St. Pete, we'll do that. Mm-hmm. And so it's fun. So we take the kind of jobs, and I say jobs, to us there's really not. We'll take the kind of shows that we can play for an hour and 20 minutes and play all our tunes that we've worked so hard on and try to make it into a show. Mm-hmm. So we have fun with it.
Yeah.
And then I sit in with 1,000 other bands, and I go out on the road with, some folks call me and say, can you fill in for me because I'm going to be doing another show, and I'll go out and play with another band. I enjoy that, so I have to learn their tunes, and that keeps me up on learning another band's list.
Absolutely.
So I do that as well. I'll probably go out, a half a dozen times or a dozen times a year with other bands to play.
Cool. Any non-musical ventures you'd like to discuss?
Non-musical ventures. Give me a hint what we're talking about, because I could go crazy here.
Anything. Well, when I say ventures, it doesn't necessarily imply for profit. Anything that takes a considerable amount of your time or a portion of your time that interests you that's non-musical.
Yeah, non-musical. Well, besides being on the golf course as much as I can be.
There you go.
I do that. You get away. Let me tell you what. Golf course is a good thing. You put your phone on off, and you're with 3 other pals. It's almost like being in a band for 4.5, 5 hours out there, and you all bust each other's butts the whole time you're there having a blast. There's a lot of things. It's like people always say, gee, I don't know what I would do if I retired. I think they must be pretty boring people. I think there's books to be read, movies to watch. There's tons of music that I just can't get to that I want to get to. I mean, think about how cool it is today compared to just 15 years ago. You can go on YouTube and watch any of your favorite acts plugged into your sound system at your house. It sounds pretty good, and you get to enjoy them. You get to learn because you can watch it again, and you can go from your favorite all-time player to some new person that just popped up. Like I love Daryl's House. I think that's so great that he brings up these artists like Candace Springs and that you would have never heard of until you see them on there.
He had Todd Rundgren on there recently. That was pretty good.
That's my all-time favorites, Todd.
That was pretty good.
I got fortunate when I was in high school. One of my favorite bands was the Nazz.
Yeah.
And I idolized the Nazz. And when I was in L.A., one of the last bands I was with out there was called Shuffle, and our drummer was Tom Mooney. So it was, for me, it was like, wow, I turned around, it's like Tom Mooney playing drums. And he's in my band with me. And Todd, I think, is phenomenal, what he's done. He's a good example. He's like a Jeff Beck. He doesn't stop. He's always changing. He's always creating. He's always got something new. He is a wizard at True Start.
Yep, I think I would agree with that.
Yeah, he is.
Discuss your practice regimen.
I practice a lot. I think it's therapy as well. I generally will play about an hour to an hour and a half each night. And I usually play before dinner or after dinner. And I do a bunch of things. Once again, technology is a wonderful thing. You can get all kind of backing tracks that you can say, okay, I'm going to play in B flat, and you can transpose them, and you can sit there and play. It's not that you're going to make a record out of it. It makes you play differently, and you play with them. You get to experiment with what you want to do without putting your bandmates through all the hassle of you playing half steps where you're not supposed to. So you make sure you're landing on the right notes. So I practice quite a bit, and I'll play a lot of different guitars. That's the other thing about today that I think is different than yesterday, was that we used to get a guitar in the old days, and that was your guitar. Now you have to have about 5 or 6 guitars, because first of all, you play different depending upon the guitar and the setup, and if it's a single coil or humbucking. But it makes it more fun. And think about how cool it is now that if you want to learn something, you go to YouTube and you can see the guy playing it. When I was learning to play, I'd go sit 100 rows back and see the guitar player who was about that big and try to look to see what he was playing and try to remember it 3 hours later when you get home. It was a mess.
Right.
Now you go on and you get to see the guy play it, they focus in on his hands, and then they play it slow motion.
Right.
You go, wow, what a wonderful time to learn the instrument.
Absolutely. Do you work a regular job?
No, I don't work a regular job. People think I don't work, matter of fact, including my wife. No, because I'm involved in different projects and I consult. I can be home sometimes for a couple weeks, but then I can be gone for a while, depending upon my client. So, no, I don't have a set schedule that I have to be someplace at a certain time or check out at a certain time. I don't twist keys. I'm not in and out. I don't do that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just so happens that's the way my schedule works now. Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be. Sometimes you're sitting at home, you're going, am I supposed to be doing anything this week? I think I'm supposed to be doing something. So I enjoy the freedom of being able to consult, the freedom of being able to do multiple things. I enjoy that.
It's been my experience that someone like yourself, as opposed to someone who has set hours, probably works harder and works more hours than someone who works an 8 to 5
That's my
job.
story, and I'm sticking to it. I want all my clients to know that I'm working really hard every day for you.
Well, most of the people I know who have similar scheduling to you, they reveal to me that they find they put in way more hours.
That's true. And you know what? If you're working for someone as a consultant, you take ownership in it, because you owe them something because they're trusting in you. So sometimes you're exactly right. You find yourself putting in more time than you thought you ever would on a project that you bid or spec or proposed, because you want to do it right.
Sure.
So yeah. And again, I respect those folks when they say, okay, we want you to come on and do this. I'm there.
Right.
I'm part of their company then at that point.
Yep, absolutely. At what point did you think you could make a living at music?
Still trying to figure that out. I figured it out when I was 17, because I left high school, like I said, and a month later I was in LA, and I think my pop gave me $100. I have a good time, and I headed to LA, and I had to figure it out. And so I think once I started getting paychecks, I went, I think I can do this. I'm going to be able to do this. And you know how the musician's life is. You're going to have a big month and some bad months, and then some great months, and then maybe no work at all. We've all got that phrase down when you're at the music store and you're not working, and someone says, hey, where are you playing? You go, oh, no, I'm not playing, I'm recording. What that means is we don't have a gig, and we're home trying to find something. So at a very early age, I knew I could make a living with my instrument. I joke today, I always say that if things go really bad for me, that I'm going to buy one of those plastic or rubber parrots and put it on my shoulder, and then I can play Jimmy Buffett songs any place on any beach in the world. Gotta have the parrot.
Tell us about your favorite guitar.
Boy, that's a tough one, but you know which one it is.
Yeah.
Because you've worked on all my guitars. And by the way, this is the guy. I've been around the country and had a lot of guys work on guitars. Scooter's a guy. My 345, I come back to it. It's a 67, as you know. It's just, I've been playing it since I got it in 67.
Yeah.
Somewhere's around there. It's one of those that gets put in the case because some new hot rod guitar came out and it gets slid under the bed, but somehow or other it made it around the country through Boston, Seattle, Los Angeles, and it's still with me. And up until about, I guess it was 2 years ago when you rewired it, when we made it mono because it was stereo, I wasn't playing it because I was saving it. Like, what am I saving it for?
Exactly.
So I said, let's take this thing out and play it. So, I mean, that's my favorite guitar. It's sentimental because it's been with me since high school and all over the world. It's sentimental, but look, you've also worked on my Strats, my Deans, my Michael Kellys, and the new Michael Kelly guitar you just worked on for me. So they're making some great instruments.
Yes, they are.
They're all fun. They're all fun. They all have a different character, and as you're getting ready to play, when you're doing a show, you go, okay, which one should I be playing tonight? Now, Roy and I have totally different styles, the other guitar player in Cuckoo could shoot. And he plays humbuckings all the time. So I'll try to play single coils when I play with Cuckoo so that we have a little different texture to what we're playing.
Sure.
So I don't play the 345 as much with Cuckoo as I would probably be playing with other bands because him and I want to blend. And Roy and I I think we do a really good job of keeping our tonality different. And since we play a little different, it works. It just works. So it's hard to pick the guitar, but if I said, okay, if everything disappeared, I guess it'd be my 345, just because it's been with me since dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, since, what's the old saying, since Jesus was a crossing guard.
I like that. Talk a little bit about your current rig, amp, strings, picks, tunings you use.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's gone through an evolution now. All of us went through we went through Fenders, we went through Marshalls, we went through Boogies, we went through Orange, we went through all the different amps. And I find more and more that a lot of us are going to low wattage amps now because it's required. First of all, you want to avoid the usual round with the front of house sound guy when you show up. What are you bringing that up here for? What are you going to do with that? So it was an adjustment for me to get used to playing with a 15-watt amp, just 15 watts. Now, just 15 watts, as we all know, is not just 15 as we remembered before. They can get pretty loud, but I've been playing with a single 12. I use a Ignator 112 because it's a ported cabinet in the front, so I get a low end kicking out the front with an Ignator Rebel 20 head that I run around probably 15 watts. And I've got it turned down. However, I just picked up one of the little Quilter amps. It's about this big.
Yeah.
And come on, we're all using pedals now, and if you've got a pretty clean amp and you can depend on your pedals, that's the way that I try to do it.
Right.
Plus, when we play outside of the Tampa area, we can't take our amps anyway.
Sure.
So what happens with backline there, you get the same old 412 whatever, or a Roland or a Fender Twin.
Right.
So I try to lean on my pedals as much as I can for consistency that I know what I've got when I get someplace. Yeah, pedals. And and I know this guy in St. Pete that makes these pedals. There's one called a Mr. Neutron, and there's one called the Copper Drive. Those have found their way in my pedal board for the last 6-7 years, I guess. And those are my go-to pedals. Those are my go-to pedals.
Well, I appreciate that.
Well, you did a good job on me. And me, I'm always comparing pedals.
Right.
Big Noise Halo was sponsored by TC Electronics, so they sent us a gob of pedals, and
those are all excellent.
And they're great pedals. They do a great job.
Yeah.
I just got so used to my Mr. Neutron and my Copper Drive that That's still there. Now I may have a whole bunch of the other TC pedals on the left side that's with it, but those are the two that I can depend on. It's become my tone, because we're all in search of the new tone. You know, that's why we keep buying more pedals, because we're all searching for that.
Well, that's the beauty of pedals. It's like an artist's palette. You know, an artist never puts the same colors on their palette when they go to paint. You know, it's good to have options.
Well, if you think about it, years ago when you showed up for a gig with an amp, that was it.
Mm.
If you come up with a few pedals now, you can change your tone to and your volumes to work with the band, whatever band you're playing with. You're not stuck with just your amp and your guitar or an overdrive pedal and your guitar. If you have an array of pedals with some, you know, with some wet stuff in there and delays, then that's the way to do it. But there's a lot of good little low wattage amps, and I see more and more guys starting to head in that direction now.
What about strings, picks, tuning?
Well, you jump on me about that all the time because I'm going to lighter gauge strings. For years I played heavier strings. I played 11s, and then I went to 10s, and had little hand issues for a while. So I'm stuck at 9s right now. The only thing, they're easier to play. My hands don't hurt as bad with 9s anymore. I like the guitar to fight me a little bit though, so I like to play a little heavier gauge. So I've started stepping back up to 10s again. And putting those back on my guitars, which I need to bring 2 by so you can set them up with the 10s. But I don't like them to be too low or too light as far as the gauge and the action. I like the guitar to fight me just a little bit, just a little bit. And it depends upon the guitar. You know, you would never put anything like an 8 or a 9 on a 345, but you could on a Strat or a Dean or a Michael Kelly. Those you can lower the gauges on the what they call pork chop guitars.
Yeah.
The old time players call them pork chops.
Sure.
Anything with a solid body. Not that I'm an old time player. Remember I showed up for a lesson from a jazz guy one time. I was about 17. And I walked in with a Stratocaster and I pulled it out the case. He goes, "Well, you got one of them pork chops." And I went, "What?" That was the first time I ever heard that expression, but he did not like the fact that I didn't have a big old fat 175er sitting there. He said, yeah, you got to get yourself a guitar. Never forget that lesson. I think I took one more lesson from him and decided it wasn't for me.
And the picks thing doesn't apply to you. You don't use a pick.
I use picks sparingly. When I do use a pick, it's a heavy pick, but I pick a lot now. And that's a thing that I changed over years. I didn't play with my fingers until about 13, 14 years ago, and I started working more and more. Still trying to get better at it.
I'm going to go off script here and add a 21st question that kind of harkens back to what we just discussed a few minutes ago. Roy Garcia, your counterpart guitar player in Cuckoo Cuckoo, is also a fantastic guitar player. Very different style from you. How has playing with Roy influenced your playing as a guitar player?
Oh, that's a really good question. Roy's a fabulous player, and also probably probably the best guy I know for chords, chord inversions, chord melodies. He's really good at that. What it's made me think about playing was because Roy is so proficient at that, is I try to play a little more rockish with the band, so that when we take, now we'll share solos, and we'll go back and forth, and I'll try to make sure maybe I use a little more tremolo wand, I bend a little more, so that my sound is totally different when we're playing, so we're both not having a fusion sound, if you will.
Okay.
And again, if you ever get a chance to see Roy just sit down, and you've seen it, he just sits down and plays guitar by himself. He's an amazing player. But it's been good, and I think Roy's having fun, because I don't think I know he's never played with another guitar player, so he's got me on the other side yanking and pulling and all kind of stuff, and he's going, wow, that's kind of weird. And I've seen it change Roy's playing in the last 10 years and how he plays as well. So we play off each other, we share, we have a really good relationship. I've never played in a band with another guitar player like Roy that we have that kind of thing. We'll try something and we'll be at rehearsal, and I'll go, I'm just not playing this right. Why don't you play it?
Right.
And then he'll say, well, okay, and he'll play it. Or he'll do the same thing, goes, why don't you play this part? So we share in the arrangement of the tunes of where we think the other guy's got the strength, or the other guy just plays that different.
Sure.
So it's a good thing, but it's a really good thing. I'm very lucky that in Cuckoo Cuckoo, every one of the players is a good player.
Yes, they are.
I mean, they're all really good players. And then you take Rodney, Rodney's the leader of the band, and He's been with the Atlanta Rhythm Section. He was with Roy Orbison. He was B.J. Thomas, music director. He sang with Roy Buchanan. I mean, come on. So he's got a really good background. If he says, you know, for instance, he told me one time I was playing something, playing the lick. He said, you do me a favor? And I said, what? He said, well, instead of playing it with a pick, can you play it all downstrokes? I went, what? And what's the difference? He said, just play it downstroke. All right. So I played it all downstroke. And he said, you hear the difference? I went, no. I play it again. So luckily, our drummer, Roger, records everything. He played it back. It really did make a difference of how you attack the guitar by playing everything down instead of playing up and down. So I give Rodney credit for that. Sometimes Roy and I look at each other and go, what? What's he talking about? Generally, because he's played with a million guitar players, he says, try this. This will work, or try that, or, you know, okay, that's the chord, but why don't you flatten this or sharp? Try that. And you go, well, you know, I don't know if that's really in the chord. Just try it. So a lot of times we try things that really shouldn't be, and we go, you know what? We're giving it the cuckoo treatment. Mm-hmm. It might not be the chord or the passage part that's in the record, but it sure works.
Yeah.
So we're lucky that we do that. We have fun with that. We try different things that way.
Thanks for that. I know I kind of sprung that question. It just occurred to me as you were talking about cuckoo.
Yeah.
What one piece of gear is essential to your playing? Something you will not play or perform without?
Usually my fan. I'd rather have a fan than an amp. Let me tell you what, I take a guitar out of a case and I start sweating at that moment. I would say it's probably either Mr. Neutron pedal or the copper drive, because I know that I can get the amp sound with any amp pretty close to what I want. Because any guitar, and yeah, you know, it's either a single coil or it's a humbucking, right? Mm-hmm. So I know that those two pedals I can depend on. So either one of those, if somebody said, okay, take a pedal with you, mm-hmm. I would take one of those. Now, when I do go out, I've got my pedals down to about 6 pedals I have on this piece of, it's a piece of like, looks like a rug, mm-hmm. and it kind of bends a little bit. And I've got them all Velcroed down so I can put them in my carry-on.
Oh, sure.
And there's only a couple pedals. You know, one of them's a tuner, so that doesn't do you anything. Mm-hmm. And those 2 pedals are the primary pedals, and I got a delay and a reverb unit in it. You know.
Okay.
It's fun going through security with that in your bag.
Describe your proudest moment as a musician.
Oh boy, that's tough. Proudest moment. Well, I had one recently that was kind of cool. When growing up, there was a lot of songs that I listened to that I liked, and there was a songwriter out of Atlanta. Matter of fact, he ended up being, he wrote a lot of the Atlanta Rhythm Section hits. He also wrote the Classics 4 hits. And in 1970, I recorded one of his songs called Purple Heart. It was 2 writers, Bowie and Cobb. And Bowie, I wrote this song called Purple Heart, and I recorded it in Los Angeles. Matter of fact, I was lucky. I had Michael Omartian play keyboards. If you know who Michael Omartian is, he also played with Steely Dan and did Vince Gill's, one of his albums. He played piano, and we actually had the engineer was the lead singer from the Electric Prunes, if you remember that band.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, Purple Heart was a song about a guy that went off to war. It's kind of a tearjerker. At the end, it says, you know, you can't even see his purple heart because all that a blind boy sees is dark, right?
Right.
So anyway, I recorded the song. Nobody would touch it because Vietnam was just over, and it was too sensitive of an issue. Mm-hmm. But I always would say, hey, you know, I've got to record one of Bowie's songs. Well, I was playing with Cuckoo Cachoo about 4 years ago, and he came down to visit with Rodney and I finally met him. Oh. And I thought that was really cool because I was like so young when I recorded a song, was a big fan of his, and I was almost like a little kid with Santa Claus. I was very excited that I met this guy that wrote all these wonderful songs. Right. And you know what? And he was a jewel of a man. Courteous, respectful, listened to me. I was acting like a fool because I was so excited to meet him. He was a great guy. Great guy. It was a big moment for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. If given the chance, what non-musical profession would you be interested in?
Actually, I have a big deal that I've been reading and reading a lot. I would like, if I had enough dough that I could just go out, I would like to go out and investigate ancient civilizations. I'm reading more and more about that. When I was a kid coming up through school, you know, things just started around the pyramid times when things were happening, and now we're finding out they found Göbekli Tepe that's in Turkey that they're thinking is 20,000 years old. We're finding pyramids because of technology. We can shoot down from the sky now and see pyramids we couldn't find before all around the planet. I think we're learning something that maybe we were here a lot longer than we were told as kids.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have the technology to figure it out. We hadn't really done the investigating, but they're starting to find more and more of those. So if I had time, because I can't stop reading about them. It seems like every country now has some civilization they're finding out goes back tens of thousands of years. So that interests me, because it's just a different world than what we thought we might have had, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because there might have been another Beatles 10,000 years ago. Who knows? Maybe there was. My guess is it'll take 10,000 years before we get another Beatles.
And would their music be used to advertise tennis shoes?
Probably. Probably.
That's terrible. All right, we are down to the last question.
Okay, do I get a prize or something?
Well, you should, because I actually added a question on here. What artist who is legendary and important and everyone loves them do you just not get?
Oh, wow. Well, let me answer that in two ways.
Well, it's not that, let me clarify just a little bit. It's not that you hate them. You recognize their artistry, but it just doesn't speak to you. And you just sit there and go, God, you know what? Everybody loves this artist.
Yeah, I'm the only one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I called it the needle drop test.
Yeah.
I used to go, somebody say, you got to get this album, right? You got to hear it. And I go, dink, 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 and flip it over and go, oh man, I just spent $6 and now I can't even, there's not a song I like here. So let me answer it this way. That, for instance, when Bruce Springsteen came out, I went, huh? I just didn't get it. Now I'm the only one, and I'm not knocking Bruce Springsteen, it's just that it didn't go into here and work. Now, later, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you the same thing, and believe it or not, when the Eagles first came out, I went, they're a cute little pop band.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, whatever, that's the Eagles. Then later in life, I started thinking, man, did they make some great records? Which, by the way, is a whole different thing than just playing music. Being able to make good records. And the Eagles were probably the best at that in America, of being able to make great records. So there were bands like that I just didn't get. I didn't get some of them when they first came out. At first, I wasn't a Yes fan. Then I became a big Yes fan. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I was playing rock and roll. All of a sudden, I'm going, well, wait a minute. Like, where are all those other things happening?
Yeah.
We're just supposed to play E, D, and A, something, maybe a G every now. What are those things happening, right? Yeah. Now, there's some people that I feel in the last 15 years, maybe 20 years, I don't know, that we got confused, the world got confused with entertainment and music. That's right about the time that everybody started wearing little headphone mics and they really weren't singing.
Right.
That confuses me, because if I'd gone to see, I don't know, pick somebody, if I'd gone to see Badfinger and they were pantomiming, I would have thrown my shoe at them or something, right? It was unacceptable.
Yeah.
It became acceptable just to show up and dance around the stage and sing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of groups, and there's a lot of groups today that, play tracks.
Right.
I mean, there's just about everybody I know is out there using a track someplace, right?
Right.
Now, and tracks are okay in the right spot, but the entertainment portion took over the musicianship of that, of what we respect, and I don't want that to become the entertainment portion to take away from these guys at their craft, how hard they work to learn their instrument, and then the other part, they learned how to be a band. Mm-hmm. That's the hardest thing for younger players today to do, is have a band. you've got to work together. You've got to play together, and you got to play together a lot to have a good band.
Right.
You know, I know a lot of guys that are friends of mine that tour, and they pass MP3 files back and forth, and they get together 3 or 4 days before they go on tour.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have a good band that way. You've got to play together. Look, God bless the Rolling Stones.
Yep, you got to play together.
Those guys will go play a little club to warm up and play before they go out, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and there's another band, you know, there's another guy, Keith Richards. I used to think, yeah, Keith Richards, yeah, okay. He bought a Vox Distortion little thing, and he did Satisfaction. Then I read his book, and then I started paying attention. You know what? I got it.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a lot for music. I got it, and he's into it. And you know, now he lives in Connecticut, and he's a white-collar guy, drives his kid to school every day, you know.
Right. Isn't it amazing how a book can sometimes turn that around?
Because you don't know enough about the person, right? You just
Right.
kind of assume things, right? Like, you know, somebody will always have their story. Oh, you know, when I met Clapton, you know, he was not a very nice guy. You know? Maybe he's a great guy. Maybe it just happened to be a bad time at that spot, you know?
Sure.
So, yeah, it was amazing. If you haven't read that book, it's a great book to read about him and find out that he really does have a music background, by the way. I didn't know he played piano.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Robin, it's been a treat.
Thanks. Hope you guys have fun. Remember, you're supposed to have fun with your instrument, okay? That's what we started this for. Make sure you have fun. Keep doing it. And do it a lot.
Everyone out there, thanks for looking in. Thanks to our good friend, Mr. Robin Sibucao.
Thanks, Scoot.
I'm Scooter, coming to you live from the Granville Guitars headquarters. If you have any questions or want to know anything more about what we do here at Granville Guitars, seek us out on the internet at www.granvilleguitars.com. I also have a blog now, A View from the Granville Bench, or you can find us on Facebook. That's all we have for today. Robin, thanks again.
Thank you.